So this is like adds on the control instructions. Maybe this functionality you don't see it in your Logic Pro, which is equivalent to SLC 500 PLC. You don't find this type of jump with input and with return, for example, or subroutine with input and return instruction with return. Maybe you don't find it, but you'll find it in PLC Logix 5000. If you try to download it for 15 days trials, you may find it in. Also, you find it in Siemens. You can have input output parameter and or input and return parameter. You find it in Siemens. So your TIA, totally integrated automation software for Siemens, you find it. What we'll present now on this slide, you can find it in Siemens. I'm not sure if it is, if you find it in Do More Designer. You can look at it. The RS Logix 500. I shared with you one time. I shared the link with you, so the software you can download. It's free to download. Also, I'm not sure if the input and return instruction exist on it. You can go and try these two software, Do More Designer and RS Logix 500, if you have this input and return instruction. But for PLC Logix 5000, it exists, and for Siemens, it exists. So SLC 500, which is this type of PLC, which is compatible with your software, Logix Pro, or PLC Logic 500, PLC Logix 500, you don't have, so as your software, you don't have this option. So if you go now to your software and you try to find input parameter, return parameter, this will don't exist. You will not finding them. But if you go to Siemens TIA software, you will find them. If you use trial version for PLC Logix 5000, you will find them. But in Logic Pro and PLC Logic 500, you don't find. In Do More Designer and RS Logix 500, I don't know. I didn't try myself. But logically speaking, I don't think it exists in the RS Logix 500, the free one you have. I don't think. I'm not sure. Do More, I don't know. Okay, what this instruction is about? Actually, sometimes you need to send an input from your main program to a subroutine. So because I told you this is as a function, sometimes your function it takes an input parameters and it returns, so it takes arguments, we call them in programming, right? So it takes arguments, and maybe these arguments you take it here, and here you do arithmetic operation, or you use this number here to do something. Then it may provide a return value as well, and this return value, it returns to your main program, so you use it. So here, like in this memory address N730, I have an input. This input, I take it as an input parameter to my subroutine, and I put it in my subroutine. I put it in another address. So I declare, like you are declaring another variable on which you are putting your input here, and then you do your program, and you return another value, which is in N750. You are saving this value in N750, so you return it and you put it in your N760, for example, okay, in this address, and you continue your program. So this is what we call passing subroutine parameters. All right. So as other adds on, I will talk about a fault subroutine file. A fault subroutine file is used, if used, determines how the processor responds to a programming error. So here, a fault subroutine, you program it yourself as a fault subroutine in case if you use it determines how your processor will respond to a programming error. So in case you have an error in your program, when the processor detects a major fault, when the processor detects a major fault in your program, it looks for a fault routine. Okay, if a fault routine exists, if you are programming, so we learn how to make a subroutine. If a fault routine exists, it's executed. So your program goes and execute this subroutine. This is for emergency case, also in case you have a fault, something wrong in your program from the first time you load it, etc. But you know, usually most of the time we simulate our program so often, many times before downloading it to the process, okay, in a real application. So that's why it's really not very used, but you could program something called major fault, and in case um, your program detecting or your processor detecting a fault in your program, it will go and execute it. If one does not exist, the processor shut down. If you don't have a fault subroutine, when the processor detecting error, it will shut down. So then in the other case, it's not going to shut down. And major fault, its name, it is like a fault subroutine. It's a fault subroutine file. And the fault subroutine file, you don't find in your Logic Pro, but in other software you find it. Fault subroutine file. Okay. When there is a fault routine and the fault is recoverable, the fault routine is executed. Only the fault routine is executed when there is um, when there is a fault routine. If you're already having a fault routine and the fault is recoverable, like you you have your fault, you like what we mean by recoverable is like um, you can try to adjust it. So by adjusting it, correcting it, so in here the fault routine is executed. The fault routine, maybe you are doing some other job, etc. So you don't shut down your processor. In the meanwhile, maybe you go and recover your fault in a way or another. Maybe by itself it could recover in the program, or you jump from it, something like. If the fault is non-recoverable, the fault routine is scanned ons and shutdowns. So if this fault you cannot adjust it in a way or another, so then the fault routine scanned only one time and then the processor will shut down. Okay, so we are not going to use a fault subroutine in your Logic Pro. I didn't use myself in other software, but you can look at it. So you need to be aware it exists. But I'm telling you, its use is very limited because now we are simulating our program in a simulator before loading it to the PLC, or even in a maybe simple system, or I'm not sure, before actually going to the actual process. Okay, you may read yourself about this specific instruction are also belong to the program control instruction you don't have in Logic Pro as well. Immediate input and immediate output instruction interrupt. What they mean? Immediate input interrupt or immediate output interrupt. What do they mean? So you go and if you are curious about or you heard about them, so actually they will interrupt the scan and I go and update the input immediately before the scan and the cycle end. Okay, same for the output. You could look at them. Here you don't have in your Logic Pro, if you go to the input output, myself, I have nothing. If your software is legal software or so, you will have them. But this is immediate input with mask. Remember we was talking about mask before. So this is with mask, okay? So I invite you to go and yourself look at the mask. Actually, yeah, here I'm putting a links for you, so you can look at them. You have the PowerPoint on Moodle, so you can look at the mask. If in case you forgot how it operates, I remember I explained it time ago. Okay, this also part of immediate input or immediate output instruction with mask, M like mask, are also part of somehow program control instructions, but we don't have them, so we are not going to apply them. You have the STE, STD, so you can search for them a bit. Their use are very limited. All those adds on, their use are very limited. So here it's explained in the program, so you can look at. And that's it for today's session. Any question?